know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers, and welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose when you're at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. Except for this week's episode, it is a Patreon-sponsored episode, and we will get into that in a moment. But first, if you head to patreon.com/punklotopod, if you want to sponsor a future episode and choose the album we devote an entire episode to, all you need to do is sign up for that $10 tier. It is a one-time $10 donation, and you tell us what you want us to talk about, and we will do it. Within reason. There's a handful of things that we have some veto power on, but really, it's just only like 2 or 3 artists that we really have such strong feelings against not covering at some point. But otherwise, pretty much fair game. We'll go outside of the genre of punk, too, if you want to pick something that's a little bit more left field. Within reason, too, you know. But even then, I don't even really know if I really care. If somebody wants us to do like a folk record from 1969, okay, we'll do it. And if you want to sign up for our producer tier, that is $5 once a month, and that gets your name said on the show every single week, so shout out to our producers, Dave Brown, my co-host on Bookenders and writer of the newsletter, Oklahoma Lefty. Shout out to Steve Long, host of the podcast Rebel Nerd Radio. Shout out to Zach in Oregon, and shout out to Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. Now 2 a week, so lots of content there. We're coming up on the best of 2025 audio, so I'll start launching that stuff probably the week of Thanksgiving is probably when I'll throw the first one up there, and we'll go from there. And then culminating in the big best of 2025 albums that you and I will do at the first week of January. So all of that is at patreon.com/punklautopod. Oh, $5 producer tier also gets access to a once a month exclusive bonus EP, where we record an audio on an EP based on a poll that we put together. So that should be coming this month as well. We should probably do that next week, but we'll see. All right, as we mentioned at the top, this week's episode is a Patreon-sponsored episode. So Dave, whenever he signs up for the Patreon, he always sends a big list of options to go through, and we'll talk about some of those in a little bit. But the one we are talking about today was released in the year 1998. And Dylan, what is going on in 1998?
So in 1998, as you may remember from a couple of months ago when we covered Harvey Danger record, I decided this time that I would look past the options, or not options, but the records that I talked about last time. I tried to go a little deeper, and I still think I wound up hitting a lot of the same sounds. So I'm just going to go a little further than I did last time. It's not going to be quite as many obvious choices. Like, I'm not going to talk about the Refused record that came out, that year. But for reference, that is out there. Even still, I found that, there were pretty recognizable names in all of these categories. It really kind of cut things off where I felt like I was getting too obscure last time. But even this time, it's not that obscure, even going a little deeper. So big trends from the time period. The 90s are so obsessed with garage rock and bluesy punk stuff. Even still in 98, we've got John Spencer Blues Explosion putting out a record, the Michelle Gunn Elephant putting out a record. Rocket from the Crypt did RFTC. Not quite in the garage rock realm, but getting into that glam rock revival sound that I think kind of is an extension of the very retro-focused garage rock style of punk in this decade. The Donnas put out American Teenage Rock and Roll Machine. Murder City Devils did Empty Bottles, Broken Hearts. So a little glammy, a little bluesy. Just the 90s. Obsessed with old stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess it makes sense, right? It's, what is it? You typically look backwards, so in the 80s, they were looking back at the 50s. So in the 90s, we're looking back at the 60s.
60s and 70s. I mean,
yeah, we kind of mashed them together.
Yeah. I do think that people got very confused.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of 70s stuff that's like, is that 60s? It's like, no, it's 70s.
Yeah.
That 70s show was launched in
97.
Yeah, so that was kind of That probably was part of the confusion, but then you had stuff like Austin Powers, too, in the later 90s, so, like, yeah, a little bit of mix-up of stuff there. Also, I don't know that the early 70s is that drastically different from the late 60s as far as, like, fashion and look-wise, but it's when you get into, like, the disco era that you really start to see some more changes,
But, really big year and time period for emo, and I kind of lumped in the emo and the post-hardcore stuff here because I felt like a lot of it overlapped more with the bands that I was finding, but I talked about quite a few emo records the last time we hit 98, and even still this year, there's Jejune, Joan of Arc, Elliot, I Hate Myself, and 12 Hour Turn did a split. Boilermaker put out their self-titled record. I love that record. Very underrated still, I think. Though I guess Boilermaker got the archival treatment. What do you call that label?
Who are you referring to? Touch and Go? Or
No. The label that does the deluxe reissues of everything.
Oh, Numero Group?
Numero Group, yeah.
Oh, they did a Boilermaker?
Pretty sure they did.
I forget. Didn't they do the Jejune stuff too? I think that's them.
I think they did too.
Yeah. So they love to repress some 90s emo. Jejune, really good band. I listened to some of those represses and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'd never really listened to them before. So that's a band I need to dive a little bit more on.
But we've also got like Still Life, still going. And that's really kind of a continuation of the early 90s kind of emo core. So unique to still have that kind of stuff coming out. And I Hate Myself kind of, I think, fits in the same lane too. And Ink and Dagger did The Fine Art of Original Sin. So that's timely to mention, I think.
Yeah. That all got reissued too. They did those reunion shows with Jeff Rickley. Yeah, there's like a compilation now of like all their 7-inches too. So I might be considering that in my compilation part of the best of lists.
Metalcore certainly a very active, big genre in the late 90s. We've got All Out War, Race Trader, Vision of Disorder. We want to get a little more obscure out there.
VOD.
Maybe some, a big name putting out a disappointing record. Earth Crisis did Breed the Killers. I don't think that one's like an outright hated record. The way
that's
like Slither is, but yeah. Breed the Killers is definitely considered a pretty noticeable dip in quality. I wouldn't say like a huge drop off, but not their most well-regarded material. A great record, Plastic Soul Impalement by Training for Utopia. Very noisy, chaotic, more on the mathcore side, but not quite doing the polyrhythm, the botch thing as much.
No.
Just kind of so noisy and ugly and weird.
Yeah, really weird band.
It fits. Bloodlet put out Seraphim Fall. So, like I said, pretty busy year for metalcore.
Yeah.
And not as big of trends, but there's a lot of thrashcore and crust and power violence kind of stuff. We've got Drop Dead, His Hero Is Gone, Force Fed Glass. We've got some beat down and I would say other bad hardcore bands that I don't think I really touched on at all last time, but worth mentioning it that this is a very active time period for that stuff. So like Cold as Life and Agnostic Front and Madball and Blood for Blood all have records. So nothing I want to listen to.
Blood for Blood are so bad. It's like bad Madball. It's like, oh no. I'm so against like beat down hardcore like this. Ugh, not a fan.
Well, there's some grindy stuff, some sludgy weird bands that I guess have a little bit of crossover with punk, but I don't know. Soylent Green. Soylent Green kind of early for doing like the southern sludge thing.
Well, I Hate God was already
I guess not, but
Crowbar, I Hate God, yeah.
Soylent Green, I feel like, is a band that is informative to like the mid 2000s southern metalcore.
Yeah, because they also were like active during that time period too. So like,
yeah,
those bands played with them, But I don't know, is Soylent Green influential band or not? I don't think they are.
Not a super influential band, but maybe more influential than you think.
Maybe.
There's a Cephalic Carnage record that I might be interested in listening to. Embodiments Embrace the Eternal is a great record.
Yeah, killer album.
But, some noise rock. Got more Cowles records.
yeah.
Some indie rock. Very late period indie rock. More of a continuation I think last time I was noticing that like indie rock is getting really soft and really folky in the late 90s. But if you want more true to the Chapel Hill sound, we've got White Trash Heroes by Archers of Love, The Pace is Glacial by Seam.
Yeah. Well, Dave sent us a list of options, and I thought we would at least like mention a couple things that we thought about too as well. And so, funnily, like one of the first things that he actually did send me was an album 3 by Two Cow Garage, and then I wound up actually picking that record for our first episode of Bookenders. So then he sent me a couple different options to kind of replace that one, but we'll go through what he sent as an option and maybe say a thing or two about him. So he sent us a proto-punk option, which is very cool. I was actually really considering doing something. Maybe we do this next week. I believe it's like this week was the 50th anniversary of Patti Smith's Horses, and I had originally talked about us covering that. And I think we could maybe squeeze that in next week. Dylan, we'll have to talk about that. But Dave sent us the Kinks self-titled record, Kinks. Apparently there's like a deluxe version that has a bunch of extra stuff on it too. But, you know, the Kinks would be cool to cover, especially in a proto-punk sort of fashion. They're one of those bands that, like, sonically, it's not MC5. You know, it's not Stooges. It's not, like, loud and heavy like that. But the more like power poppy kind of stuff that really informed a lot of the songwriting of like, especially like the UK punk scene in the late 70s. That came out in 1964 too, so that's way early. And then feel free to jump in on these as you feel. Dave also sent 1983's Life's a Riot with Spy vs. Spy by Billy Bragg. Billy Bragg is an artist that I have strongly considered covering on the show at some point. There's like the first couple Billy Bragg LPs are excellent, and I think would make for some good episodes. Probably wouldn't do more than one of his records, so it would just be like we would just have to pick a record to do. But that one would be one I would consider. Life's a Riot. Dave suggested the Joshua Tree by U2. Big record. I actually listened to it not that long ago. I think ultimately we wound up kind of passing on it because we have done a U2 record in the past, and we kind of want to do something different that we haven't done an episode on. But that is a very good record and a really important record in their catalog and just for music in general. He sent A Boy Named Goo by the Goo Goo Dolls from 1995. We have toyed with doing a Goo Goo Dolls record in the past as well, so that's always an option for us as well. I think they may be just slightly outside of our punk genre tree umbrella that we tend to fall under, but I don't know. It's our show. We can do whatever we want. He sent Swing Utter's self-titled record, the one from 2000. That's the one where it's just like a blue cover and like a building looks like in the middle of nowhere. Very good record. I love that period of Swing Utters the most. That early to middle time period there with stuff with like 5 Lessons Learned and Juvenile Product. Like I love that era. Frank Turner's Tape Deck Heart was an option as well. And then as a replacement for that Two Cow Garage album, he sent Scatterbrains, Here Come Trouble from 1990. I do not know that record at all. I know nothing about Scatterbrain, actually. So that one would have been a deep pull. I knew the name, but that's it. So, anything in there that was jumping out to you, Dylan?
The Swingin' Utters would be interesting. I've certainly heard that U2 record, and maybe that's too far outside of punk at that point in their career to really consider. The Kinks, really early Kinks, I'd be interested in, but
yeah, that was the 64 record. So
yeah, but I think in terms of like proto-punk records, there's quite a few other records I'd rather do, or that I think we should do first. We had talked about that Patti Smith Horses episode a while ago, and I was just thinking that recently, like, we should probably do that soon if we're going to. So
yeah,
maybe next week.
Yeah, that would make it work for our before we get into other stuff. So yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about what we did choose from that list. So Dave sent us a list of options, and on that list was the album Over the James by Avail. Some stats on the band. From Richmond, Virginia, they formed in 1987. This was released April 7th, 1998 on Lookout Records, and it is their fourth studio album. Avail play a mix of melodic hardcore, gruff punk rock, and a little bit of alt-country twang in there as well. And the personnel on this record is Gwamper, aka Justin Burdick on bass, Eric Larson on drums, Joe Banks on guitar, Tim Barry on vocals, and Bobo as performer, parentheses, cheerleader. We could talk about Bo in a little bit. And it was produced by the band as well as Mark Miley. And, as usual, whenever we do one of these episodes, Dave likes to send over some audio for us to listen to. So, here we go.
All right, let's see if I can do this. It's 6:28 in the morning. I haven't recorded audio in a long time, and we'll see if I can remember.
There's people in the river, but the river's still flowing east. Outdoors the planet, the night out the key, the downtown clean sail. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. And the sun still shines over the James.
Justin, Dylan, how's it going, guys? Your good friend Dave Brown here, and gonna talk some stuff about this album I paid you to talk about. So, yeah, I've already forgotten what I was gonna say. Jesus Christ. Okay, so 1998, Avail. Before we get to that, I'm curious. I'm not going to talk about all the records I sent you guys as other options, but I would like your thoughts on why you picked Avail, other than when I sent you this email with the list of potential options. I said, I think immediately, I know you're going to pick the Avail album. And lo and behold, you picked the Avail album. But some other choices, I gave you a proto-punk era choice from the Kinks. I gave you a Billy Bragg record, a U2 record, a crossover thrash record by this great band called Scatterbrain, a Goo Goo Dolls record, the Avail record, obviously, a Swingin' Utters record, and a Frank Turner record. So, other than I know you guys already love Avail and know this record and love this record, I'm really curious why this one and not the others. A couple I suspect I know why, because, who the hell knows who Scatterbrain is. I think you would enjoy it. It's fun. But 1998, I'm also very interested in hearing what your thoughts on 1998, your also rans in the new format you guys do, where you talk about all the different genres and whatnot. And it'll be, while Avail is a melodic hardcore band is the best way to describe them, trying to find, also rans with Avail is hard because no one really sounds like Avail. They have this fascinating mix of DC hardcore, post-hardcore, melodic hardcore, and then they're unabashedly Southern, and they've got elements of Southern rock. They're also metalheads, and they've got elements of metal in there, and there's just so much of everything that it creates such a unique sound. And on top of that, you've got Tim Barry's lyrics, which are fantastic, even if you don't know what in the hell he's talking about. Because there are a lot of times I'm like, wow, this is some deeply personal stuff about what exactly, I don't know, but it's very deep and personal. So my story with Avail, I had this friend named Kevin. He gave me a cassette that on one side had the Donna's self-titled album before it was reissued by Lookout. And on the other side, he had Avail's Dixie. And I instantly fell in love with both. Then I found a copy of Over the James at our local punk record store, Music Dimensions, and picked it up and was completely blown away. I think this is easily the best thing the band ever did. It is their peak. I do think the records on Fat are better than most of us probably remember. I do remember when they came out, they were feeling a little disappointed, a little underwhelmed with them. But I mean, you make your magnum opus, and after that, it's always hard to follow up, right? But in 1998, so the things that I was listening to that were standing out to me, this was the year that the Dropkick Murphys' full-length debut, Do or Die, comes out. It's also the same year, months later, the lead singer, Mike McCoolgan, bails to get a new lead singer, Al Barr, and release the first EP with him, Curse of a Fallen Soul, on TKO Records. Great 7-inch. One Man Army put out their full-length debut, Dead End Stories, fantastic. Riot Squad put out the Scary Picture Show EP, all put out Mass Nerder. Swingin' Utters put out 5 Lessons Learned. The Donnas put out American Teenage Rock and Roll Machine. The Forgotten put out Vini Vidi Vici. I probably mispronounced that. Rancid put out Life Won't Wait. Some others that were on my radar at the time: Hagfish is self-titled. The Truants, Don't Look Back. Buffalo Tom's Smitten. The Brian Setzer Orchestra, The Dirty Boogie. Don't laugh. Stop laughing. That record is shockingly good. I might make you listen to that one next. Seriously. They do a version of Rock This Town on there that is so much better than the original. Anyway, The Bodies, Hole, Dillinger 4, Refuse, Goo Goo Dolls, R.E.M., Dwight Yoakam, Against All Authority, Alkaline Trio, Jesus and Mary Chain, the formerly known as Dixie Chicks, the Ducky Boys, all put out records in 1998. 1998 was a hell of a year. It was kind of the peak of the late 90s street punk thing going on. And yeah, I think, so to me, Over the James is a perfect record. I don't know about you guys, but the whole thing from top to bottom, I was blown away by. The first time I heard it, it's almost hard to put into words, especially, at 6:30 in the morning. But I love it, and I think it's amazing. So I'm not going to say more than that, because last time I sent you one of these, I think I talked for 15 minutes, and it was ridiculous. Anyway, before I go, though, one thing I love is when an artist reuses refrains or lyrical bits over and over and over throughout their career. Dave Haas has done that with the Loved Ones and with the solo stuff, and even in the Albrights. And Tim Barry used a bit of Scuffle Town, which I played a little bit at the beginning. We're going to hear a little bit at the end, in a song from his 2014 album. God, what was the name of that record? Hold on. I have to look again. Lost and Rootless. Yeah, so he had a song on there called The James, and it's gorgeous. I'm going to play you a little bit of it on the way out. So I love it. And speaking of, love you guys. Be safe out there. Talk to you soon.
One by one by, I've tried. The roots are pushing up the sidewalk bricks here, one at a time. And it's a beautiful day, a beautiful day. And the sun's still shining, shining over the James. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. And the sun's still shining, 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 shining over the James. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. And the sun's still shining, 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 shining over the James. Yeah!
Dave, thank you. Thank you so much for the little voice mini pod that you submitted to us. I always appreciate whenever you pick an album, because you always send us something like this, and super, super useful to kind of point us in a direction to go in. I guess we can start with the main question Dave asked there. What made us choose this record? When I sent you the list, you answered pretty much immediately. I also, when I saw the list the first time, knew pretty much immediately that I wanted to do this record. But I guess let's talk about it a little bit more. What made you want to do this record?
Of the records that were listed that he gave us options for, the ones that stood out to me the most were the ones that I was already familiar with. So cheating a little bit, I guess. Yeah. Dave, if you want us to listen to something obscure, pick an obscure record and make us listen to it. But if you give us a lot of options, we're going to go with the stuff we already know. Just a little peek into our psychology, I guess. If you want to play the game, that's how you win. But of those records that were most familiar to me, this one I liked the best. Like, I knew it, and I knew that I would like it. And I think to go a hair deeper than just, oh, well, I picked the easy, obvious record that I already know, I think you and I both kind of said this, but we should have done an Avail record by now, I think, plays into it, because they're a very important band. I think, just generally speaking, they're a very important band. Well, they're a very important band in particular to us in what they influenced and how influential they were to music that's really, really important to us, and kind of the scene where I felt like we really cut our teeth as punks and like really leaned into and found a sense of community and a sense of place within the genre. Going past the classic era of punk of 70s and 80s, 70s punk and 80s hardcore, and like getting really into what's happening at the moment. When we did that, a lot of that music, a lot of those bands were influenced by Avail. Very directly, like very specifically named as an influential band, but also indirectly. I think the particular blend of sounds that Avail uses and who they are as people, I think, and how they carry themselves and their ethics laid a lot of groundwork for a ton of bands and a lot of the music that we listen to. So really it was kind of just, we have a reason, not that we needed a reason to talk about Avail before, but like we had even more of a case that it was just like someone is limiting our choices and our options down to Avail as a possibility. And we're going, okay, that's the sign we need to do this really important band. Cause it just the way that we do this show. And I think what moods we're in from time to time, like we might land on a year that has an Avail record, but we might not be in the mood for that specific kind of punk. Like when we're deciding on our own, we might not, maybe we've been doing too many records that are in the same vein. It's kind of funny that we're doing this record after the record we did last week. But no, I'm excited to talk about this record.
My answer to the question is why we chose this record out of everything. Because it fucking rocks. Like, not to give away like my feelings on the album, but like it's an incredible record and it's incredibly important, super influential. Like there's so many reasons why we should have done Over the James before now. But I wanted to give you, here's what we have covered from the year 1998 so far. And I think it'll kind of show you like how we've not gotten to this record yet. I do know for a fact that you and I have put like Dixie and maybe 4 a.m. Friday on a list of options for other episodes. And I think every time we ever put those on there, we were like, let's wait for Over the James. I think we were specifically like, let's hold on for the big record by them to do. But out of everything we've already covered from 1998, listen to this list. We did Radon's 28. I don't know, that's a super influential band, an important band, especially to Florida, but massive record. We did, this was a Patreon sponsored episode, or no, it wasn't Patreon. This was a guest choice episode. We did the Non-Compost Mentis album with the Bedtime Magic guys. Not a very important record, but important to them. We did Ink and Daggers, The Fine Art of Original Sin. We did that with Open City. That was another guest selected. And then we did Dillinger 4's Midwestern Songs of Americas. That is a massive record. That was a Patreon sponsored album, but that record's so huge we would eventually got to that one as well. Rancid's Life Won't Wait. We did that one with Adam Yo. We've had a lot of guest episodes for the 1998, but we've also done 88 Fingers Louie, which was another Patreon sponsored episode. And we did Indecision's Most Precious Blood. We did Braid's Frame and Canvas, and we did Harvey Danger's Where Have All the Merrymakers Gone? That's the one we did this year. So that's the most recent one. And so, yeah, most of those are guest selected or Patreon sponsored. But even the ones that you and I wound up picking were still like big important records, like the Braid record and the Indecision record and the Radon record. So I think 98 was just such a big year, and that's how we've always kind of like skipped over the James each time. But yeah, we should have done that one by now. Very similar to last week's episode where we did the Face-to-Face record. We probably should have done a Face-to-Face record before now, but here we are. There's just so many options to choose from and a lot to go through. But yeah, 98 is a huge year. There's so much big stuff that came out that year. And this is another major stepping stone record. Dave kind of mentioned a few of these, but in our little Also Ran section, Dave did point out that like nobody sounds exactly like Avail. And that is true. No one sounds exactly like them. But there are a shit ton of bands who are influenced by them, and we'll talk about them a little bit later. But what did you have on this list? I know Dave mentioned a few of them, but what else do we have here?
Yeah, so some of the other stuff going on, I guess maybe less common names. You know, we've talked about stuff from 98, and like there's definitely some other bands in like the Dillinger 4 lane, you know, that I would say are good comparisons. But there's other sides to Avail, and I think there's probably the biggest to us, most important band that I think is doing a similar but different thing. I think is similarly influential to a scene that we were into later on, but Kid Dynamite put out their self-titled record.
Yeah.
Do Kid Dynamite and Avail sound the same? No. but are
Put
they
them on a bill
influential
together.
to the same people? And yeah, did they play together? Yeah, for sure. If you want to get more into like melodic hardcore, do we consider Strung Out more melodic hardcore or more skate punk?
I consider them more skate punk, but in the 90s, those lines are very blurred.
Yeah.
Like the pop punk, skate punk, melodic hardcore lanes are like they cross over a lot. So
yeah. So I would say Strung Out, Twisted by Design. That's a comparison to make. Back on the Streets by 88 Fingers Louie, a little more hardcore, but again, a good reference to good comparison. I kind of threw some stuff on here that I'm like, this feels similar. The Vandals did Hitler Bad, Vandals Good. Good Riddance did Ballads from the Revolution. Frenzal Rom did Meet the Family. Then there's the stuff that Dave mentioned, Swingin' Utters, All. I think that stuff is very much in the same lane as Avail.
I was kind of looking at just this little document I have of some stuff that I've been tracking by year, and even looking at a few things that haven't been mentioned yet so far that I do think kind of are close. Like you could file them close to each other. That Broccoli record came out, Home, that came out in 1998. A great record. It's from the UK and more Leatherface influenced, but like definitely in the same vein. Civ released 13 Day Getaway, which was like, that was mostly a pop punk record, but it's the Gorilla Biscuits guys, so there's some melodic hardcore in that sound too. There is Gray Area did their self-titled record. They're like I think they're from New York, but they're another melodic hardcore band. Their best record is Fan Belt Algebra. And Panther UK United to 13, Plow United, Saves the Day released Can't Slow Down, which is their like fast melodic hardcore record too, their first album. The Broadways did Broken Star. Yeah, so like there's a decent amount of other stuff that kind of like fits in that same little vein too. 98, huge year. Personal experience with the band. Where do they start for you as far as listening?
Was there an Avail song in a soundtrack? Tony Hawk 4?
Oh, yeah.
Simple
Which song is it? Simple Song. Yeah,
Yeah.
which I think is on. What's Simple Song on? Is it on 4 a.m. Friday?
That's from the 96 record? 4 a.m.
I think
Friday?
so. Yeah.
Yeah, Simple Song was in like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4.
Yeah.
Probably the first time I heard Avail. That would be that.
First time we heard a lot of bands. Tony Hawk games.
Yeah.
Those, I think they're well regarded and well talked about. Like as far as video games, they're highly regarded, and even the soundtracks, those are highly regarded soundtracks for video games. I would say they're highly regarded, and they are noted as important, but I feel like they're even more important than what people even remember. Like I feel like there are people who forgot they heard a song in a Tony Hawk game first and got them interested in it. So
I think a lot of people recognize that the first one was very informative for a lot of people. I think everyone forgets that they had like, I don't even know how many games.
Yeah, there's a ton.
But like 2,
10 of
3,
them.
4, you like remember that a song was on that soundtrack and you're like, oh yeah, that's the first time I heard that song. And then I heard it like 40 times.
Yeah, 400 times. Like you just grinding through these games trying to like get all the goals and video cassette tapes and and you're just like, yep, I've heard Ace of Spades 100 times this year.
Yeah. Like that would be the first time I heard Avail. In terms of like really listening to Avail, I've never had a very consistent phase of my life where I spent a considerable amount of time listening to Avail records. I have heard probably every Avail record. Let me double check that. But maybe I haven't listened to Satiate.
Really?
Maybe. I've probably heard enough from it, but I don't know that I've actually like really listened to that, but I've heard, and I haven't. Okay, I've heard the '90s or the main stretch of '90s Avail records. I can't say that I've listened to One Wrench or Front Porch Stories, but Dixie, 4 a.m. Friday, Over the James. I have heard those 3 records quite a few times in my life over a large span of time, but I've never had a year where I listened to more than one Avail record. I've just kind of like dabbled in them over the years. I would say Dixie is the one I've heard the most.
My introduction to Avail was actually through Fest, back when they used to do the like Sunday morning yard sale thing at the No Idea Records house. They would have a table full of stuff, usually some exclusives, and then like a bunch of test presses, or if their catalog, like, their distro, if there was something that a lot of people actually saved up their, buying, and especially the international people would come to that yard sale specifically to buy a bunch of records at one time that they didn't want to pay shipping internationally for. Our good friend Dr. Corey, he also would do that. He would go and he had a list of things he was looking for, and he would try and get them all at the flea market and the yard sale, which is kind of an underrated thing. But they used to, at the beginning of those days, they would actually do like a thing where they would just like give out a bunch of like dead stock, basically stuff that like nobody really wanted to buy. A lot of CDs, because this was like the period where vinyl was coming back around. A CD was on its way out. But they would throw some vinyl out there, like some of the more obscure stuff, lesser known stuff. And I remember that they threw out copies of the Live at Kings Road 10-inch. And that was my introduction to Avail. Besides the song and Tony Hawk. I didn't seek them out after hearing that song in that game. But this was my intro. I listened to that thing and I was like, it's a live 10-inch. I don't really like this. But apparently, that 10-inch was everywhere. I read an article that was talking about how like Avail's records were in like every distro at every record, or in every record store, and it was like at every live show somebody set up a distro at, they had like copies of this record or the 10-inch. So they always had that everywhere. And I saw that 10-inch so many places.
Yeah, you got multiple copies of that Avail Live at King's Head in.
Yeah.
Because I have one.
Yeah, I got 2 of a lot of stuff that I definitely thought you would want. Because it was free, So that would have been my first introduction. Then I would have started my journey into Avail, and I would always start with Satiate, and then like it would kill my momentum. So Satiate's their worst record to me. Some people love it, some people think it's their best. It's just so rough, and it doesn't have like the qualities that I really love from Avail, like the later records do. And so that record would always like, I'd get stuck at it, and then it took me a while to just be like, just listen to the other ones. You don't have to listen to all the records, but that's my brain. Yeah, and so then after that is when I would start to kind of explore and like dig into the Avail catalog, and yeah, this is the record that I would come back to the most, just because it was such a standout to me. But yeah, Dixie, 4 a.m. Friday, and Over the James were the 3 that I listened to the most. They are the strongest records in their catalog, and Over the James just felt like a culmination. Like everything they were working towards finally came to fruition on this record. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I chose it. It's such a big record and influential and good. Let's run through the story. So Avail originally formed in Reston, Virginia in 1987. And the lineup of that band was Joe Banks, Doug Crosby, Brian Stewart, and Mikey Worstler. So the only original member of Avail that becomes a member of the important period of the band is Joe Banks, the guitar player. So most of the members wind up quitting the band at some point, and Joe Banks manages to convince Tim Barry of rival band LDK, which stands for Learning Disabled Kids, to join the band on drums. He's originally the drummer of Avail. They released a demo called Reaching Out in 1989 with Joe Banks on guitar, Tim on drums, and DJ Grimes on bass and Brian Stewart on vocals. I do think Doug Crosby might be DJ Grimes. Not entirely sure. I couldn't get that clear. And then they recorded a 7-inch with Don Zientara at Inner Ear that was released by the band and a smaller label called Sunspot Records. Reston is right outside of DC. It is considered, I don't know if it's considered part of the DMV, but it is like right there. So they were essentially a DC suburb band. So Grimes and Stewart, they quit the band, and Tim and Joe decide to relocate. So they move Avail from Reston to Richmond, Virginia in 1990. And then they spend a little time struggling to try and find a lineup. And eventually they will bring in drummer Eric Larson and bassist Charles McCauley, or Chuck, actually. Chuck McCauley, to release their debut album Satiate on Catheter Assembly in 1992, which is their own record label. That would get then reissued like a year later on a bigger label. They would then assign to Lookout Records and begin their trilogy of classic albums. And it's very funny. The story is that after Satiate came out, Avail just hit the road. And they toured nonstop. Avail was a road band. They stayed on the road almost all year long. Like, they were one of those 200 days a year bands that just lived in a van all year long for years and years and years in a row. So they eventually make it all the way out to California. And as Larry Livermore tells it in his book, the band just showed up uninvited to the Lookout Records headquarters. They forced Larry to go through his piles and piles of mail until he found their demo tape. They forced him to play it. They said, put it on. We're going to listen to it. And then they all sat in the room and listened to the demo together. And when it was done, they said, sign us to Lookout. And left. And then Larry would then sign them to Lookout Records. So Avail bullied their way onto Lookout Records, which I find absolutely hilarious. They would release Dixie in 1994 and 4 A.M. Friday in 1996 on Lookout. And they went into the studio December 1997 at Montana Studios in Richmond, Virginia, with engineer and producer Mark Miley, who had previously worked with Gwar, who was another Richmond band, the SST Records experimental bass band Hotel X, which also had members of Gwar in it. This is 90s SST. Weird time period. He also had recorded with Amberetta, Action Patrol, Maximilian Kolbe, the Ernies, and Bad Guy Reaction, which featured members of Young Pioneers and Ted Leo and the Pharmacists. He also recorded Disinterment with Chris Norris and Ryan Parrish of Darkest Hour. And he'd recorded the band that Eric Larson played in called Kilara in 1997, which features Brandon Evans of City of Caterpillar and Page 99. The same year, 1998, this guy also recorded music by Alabama Thunder Pussy. He kind of becomes like this in-demand engineer. Like, a lot of those records, those are names. Like, most of that stuff are names. Oh, I did not realize. I don't know if you knew this, Dylan. The name 4 A.M. Friday by Avail for that record, it was 4 a.m. when they learned about the passing of one of the members of Maximilian Kolbe. Like, that is why that record is called that. Yeah, which shows, like, how close Avail was with a lot of these bands. Richmond was a very tight-knit scene. And then, this guy goes on to record a couple more Avail records with them, and he would record with Hot Water Music, Municipal Waste, and Hopes Fall, weirdly, of all bands. So this is bassist Gwamper's first album with Avail. He replaced Rob Kelshian, who was in the band Ipecac, and he played bass on 4 A.M. Friday only. He replaced Chuck, who was their original bassist. Gwamper was part of the same kind of like Richmond crew. They all lived in like this same kind of house together. It was like they called it a group home, which I don't think he meant it the way of like real group homes are meant, but meaning that like 14 people were living in the same house together. It's a punk house is really what it was. And he was like a drifter. Like, this guy would hitchhike across the country. He'd go back and forth. He'd be in California. He'd be in New York. He'd be all over the place. And apparently he was living in North Carolina at the time. I'm sure just like right over the line. I'm not entirely sure where. And he apparently he got a friend to drive him up to Richmond, and he got out, and like within like 15 minutes of being dropped off at the corner of this like street, Tim Berry ran into him. He's like, I knew when I got here, I would just run into you. He was hanging out at a 7-Eleven, like going through trash and like looking for change. He was just like, hey, I know you. And so they tell him like, come back to the house, And at the time, Tim Berry says that they had this bassist, and they were like, this guy's going to quit. Like, they knew this guy was going to leave, Rob Kelshian. They're like, yeah, I don't think he's cut out for this tour machine thing. And so they had a tour for Europe booked. And before they left for tour, Tim just hands Gwamper a guitar and says, learn all the Avail songs. He was a guitarist, not a bassist, but he had to learn how to play bass for the band. He had to learn how to play bass on a guitar, which is very weird. Weird way of doing that. But, he learned the root notes, I guess. And so then they go on tour, and it's a tour of Europe with Citizen Fish. It's supposed to be a 7-week tour, and they come back halfway through because Rob had quit the band. They're like, they do it, and he did. So Rob Kelshian's out, Gwamper is in. So this record also features a guitar interlude at the end of Nickel Bridge, which is played by Butch Banks, which is the only credit that this guy has on Discogs. His last name is Banks. I assume he is Joe Banks' brother, maybe? It's like a little like classical guitar piece. Brian Cox of the band Alabama Thunder Pussy would do the layout and the design and photography for this record, and it would be released on CD and vinyl. And this is their final record for Lookout Records. It would get reissued in 2006 on Jade Tree Records, as well as include a bunch of bonus tracks, which I believe one is like a split with the Young Pioneers, and then the others are some covers from some compilations that they had done. So yeah, just road machine band, just constantly on the road. Bo's funny. He's their dancer. He's like the guy in the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones who like they'd have just dance on stage. I think he does less specific dancing. He's like a hype man though. He like directs the crowd and the crowd surfers and like people jumping up on stage, and he like gets people to riled up to. It's a cheerleader. It's what it is. Hype man cheerleader kind of thing. It's kind of funny to include him on a record. He does do some backing vocals on records. That's like what he contributes. The original story is like Tim Barry's drum kit when he first joined Avail was such a bad kit that it would fall apart as he was playing it. And Bo just sat next to Tim and like put the pieces back together. Like that was Bo's job. And then eventually he just starts to become more and more part of the show. So it's just a very funny way to include somebody in your band.
Lately I've been thinking, not about what you said, but what you did. If you're behind it, you decide. I'll survive. I've been spending time looking out instead of in. Gotta keep reminding myself, begin means end. And I'm walking through the alleys in the morning, and I'm trying to do some thinking. I gotta know this time for sure. Tell me why I'm feeling pressured. Tell me why you feel alright, but still I don't.
But yeah, what'd you think of it? Revisiting it.
A very easy listen, a lot of fun, and a good reminder of how good Avail are at their best. And I've gone back to other Avail records kind of recently, and like, you know, I think a record like Dixie is like half great and half fine. Like something like Dixie is enjoyable from beginning to end, but not amazing the whole time. And Over the James really is the pinnacle, I think, of quality of Avail. And I would say that it's because I would be tempted to say it's because they really found their voice. Because I think an issue with the really early stuff is that they're kind of pulling in two different directions of like melodicism versus hardcore, and where Avail really succeeds, and they do get it right on quite a few songs on Dixie in particular, their early material, like is in being able to get everything to work at the same time. That hardcore element, that those metal influences, that melodicism. But I don't think that this record sounds like, you know, not every song on this record is Simple Song or Scuffle Town. You know, like there's not just one sound that dominates the whole record, that every song fits that mold of the ideal kind of crystallized Avail sound. There's a lot of stuff going on this record. They actually have a lot of variety from song to song within, you know, their genre, but even then getting outside of it and bringing in those like acoustic elements and that folk influence and country influence. And they managed to really craft an excellent record, like from beginning to end, with a lot of variety. It's not top loaded. The pacing's never off. I realized like halfway through this record, I was just like, the flow of this record is excellent. It really is a top-notch sequenced record because you get a lot of variety in a short span of time.
Yeah, I love this record. Revisiting it, I was like singing along with songs. Some songs that like I couldn't initially sing along with like right away, I would go back to like the second time around, and I would be like, oh yeah, I know these words to this song. And it's funny because like I listened to it and I'm like, I know this record really well. Like I kind of forgot how well I knew this album and how much time I'd spent with it. But maybe that's also a you know, tribute to the fact that like these songs are incredible. These songs are phenomenal. Like I cannot believe how good some of the songs on this record are.
Yeah, I would say that the truth is probably more that the songs are just very strong and the performances is great, and they're very locked in on this record into doing what they're doing. Because, like, I know I haven't listened to this record a ton. I know I've listened to it a couple times over the span of 15 years, but I don't think like I said, I've never had a period of time where I listened to more than one or two Avail records in 1 year. I wasn't reaching for them regularly very often. And I had like the same experience of listening to this record and being like, wow, I know this way better than I thought I would. And in fact, I know this better than I should because I know that I haven't listened to it that many times. So like, I think you have probably listened to it a lot more than I have, but I don't think that it needed to be listened to a million times for it to be super memorable. I think it is a record you can hear once or twice, and the next time you hear it, could be years in between, like with me, and it's still extremely familiar.
Yeah. The influence of Avail is not understated either. They were incredibly influential. They don't sound exactly like anyone else. I do think that Avail may be one of the most important early orgcore bands as far as like they actually kind of fit in the orgcore scene as far as like the type. They played with a lot of these bands and did collaborate with them a lot, but they're also influential on that scene too. Like I'd say Avail and Leatherface are probably like two of the most influential punk bands of all time, specifically into that like late 90s orgcore kind of sound. I guess you could throw Dillinger 4 in there too, but their first record's 98 too, so it's not even that much. And there's a handful, like Kid Dynamite being out there is another really important one too, but when I listen to Avail, I hear the bands that are about to like become huge. Like Howard Music is already a band at this point, but like they released No Division like the next year, and that's where people say like that is where the Over the James influence comes in. That is where the Avail influence is like at its most obvious, because like the stuff they did before No Division was a little jazzier, a little more post-hardcore, a little bit more technical. And then they kind of simplified the songwriting for No Division, and even have Tim Barry on the record singing backing vocals on here. Strike Anywhere, I think, forms or releases their first record like in 1999. Like they are right after them, and they are a Richmond band too. And Strike Anywhere has a similar kind of melodic hardcore kind of thing going on too that puts them in this same lane. Rise Against is another one who I think is supposed to be influenced by this record because they put their first record out, I believe, in 99, or one, maybe not their first, but like one of their big ones. No, because 88 Fingers Louie is still a band already in 98. So yeah, I think Rise Against is another one. And then you could hear it in Against Me, they started with the folk punk thing.
You can extremely hear it in Against Me. There's multiple phrases on this record where I'm like, oh, Against Me stole that. Correctly. It's just like the exact phrasing, tone of voice, kind of melody. Like it's like, oh yeah, Against Me really was just doing Avail, kind of one to one.
Yeah, and so they're just super important for what's to come, really, with punk rock, especially in the early 2000s. A lot of the No Idea stuff. I mean, most of the No Idea stuff is just Hot Water Music influenced, but because Hot Water Music is also Avail influenced, it trickles into those bands and that scene at that time. It's like Face to Face was like super influential and important. I love that we're doing Face to Face and Avail back to back because they are both extremely influential bands on two different corners of punk rock, but I guarantee Face to Face and Avail probably played shows together too, and it would have worked as a bill. It would have worked perfectly. To me, it was always funny that Avail was on Lookout because I'm just like, doesn't really sound like most of the Lookout bands. Most of the Lookout is doing Ramones core. I mean, there are exceptions, obviously, but yeah, Avail, the melodic hardcore band, which it's so funny. I read articles and like almost every article talks about them as a hardcore band primarily. And I guess it's right. They are a melodic hardcore band more than they are a punk rock band. But the stuff, it's just because where we come in from as fans and listeners is it reminds us of the punk stuff. So I think of them more as just like a punk rock band. But these are hardcore songs, with decent amount of melody and catchiness to a lot of the songs on here. I was going through lyrics, it's personal lyrics, like Dave mentioned there. There was personal stuff that you don't really know exactly what they're talking about. Similar to the Face to Face record, it's just like these mean something to the person writing them, but I don't know if they mean as much to us. But the one song on here that is just like, oh yeah, that is 100%. The Scuffle Town, which is like their big song, which is where the line Over the James comes from. The lyrics in that song are, it's a love letter to Richmond, is what it is. And I just wanted to read the lyrics. It's a very repetitive song, so there's not a ton of lyrics here, but I just wanted to do it. So the first verse is, there's ketone in the river. Ketone is like a toxic chemical that was like dumped in the James River by Allied Corporation in the 60s and 70s. And so the joke has always been like, don't swim in the James. It's a gross river full of toxic chemicals. Like, don't get in there. But it circles the city essentially. Like, it's such a big part of Richmond. I think it is getting better. I think the ketone is like, it's now kind of like reduced quality. You know, it's not as dangerous anymore. But it's probably one of those things where people are just like, don't get in that. Then he goes, but the river's still flowing east. Ethel dosed the planet in an attempt to keep the downtown clean. And so that is this is like a geography lesson of Richmond. There was I guess it's a newspaper, the Daily Planet, was in Richmond. Oh, no, excuse me. The Daily Planet was a social service and gathering place for homeless people. And it was like right across from a 7-Eleven on like Cumberland and Belvedere. And they got run out and it was bulldozed. And Ethel was apparently behind it. I'm not sure what Ethel is. This genius annotation is like a quote from an interview, but it doesn't say what Ethel is. I imagine it's like some sort of company or something. But they got rid of it because like the homeless people were there. And they were just like, we got to get rid of this. Very NIMBY kind of thing. Still, it's a beautiful day and the sun's still shining over the James. Oregon Hill is in exile. VCU crept up and lit the torch. Oregon Hill was a large working-class white neighborhood in the heart of Richmond. It housed workers at the local prison complex and the ironworks, and both those places got shut down in the early 90s, and Oregon Hill had been cut down by land grabs from Ethel Corporation. There it is. They were fuel. Oh, it's the fuel. It's ethyl in your gas. That's who it is. They're the fuel additive. Okay. They had corporate offices there in Oregon Hill. And it's another one, just like these corporations just running people out. It got gentrified by VCU students and their parents. And today it is like, it's a high priced neighborhood full of upper middle class home buyers. And none of the people from the original demographic live there anymore, which funnily enough, Dylan, you were just talking about Silver Lake being gentrified the other day.
Gentrification. The whole conversation about gentrification has been so watered down, especially in like LA, where it's just like people are complaining about, well, I mean, for one, people are so vocal about the neighborhoods that are already long gone. And it's like, what are you doing about the neighborhoods that are like actually being gentrified at the moment? And like, there's certainly some people that are vocal about those neighborhoods, but yeah, like nobody complains about an Oregon Hill.
Yeah.
Until it's already done.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I don't know. It's a very frustrating conversation because people want to make it about the people that are moving into the neighborhood and not about the people who own the land.
Right.
Not about the corporate landlords, not about the corporations, you know, that benefit from revitalizing those neighborhoods. Like, and they just make it like, oh, artists are moving here and ruining the neighborhood. It's like, well, there are artists that need to live somewhere. You know, these are also working class people. But anyway, I don't want to get on a whole gentrification soapbox, but
West Avenue honkies, don't forget that trains still run north. West Avenue honkies. West Avenue was a 3-block street in Richmond across from one of the VCO art buildings. And it's very old, very expensive homes. And it's one of those kind of homes, those like stretches of, if you go like a block in any direction, you would never guess that this like rich section existed. I feel like most towns have this too. Like, I know Hickory for sure has like, you know, it has a couple blocks of like rich homes. And then if you just like go like a little bit further down the street, it's like, oh, there's a weed store. There's Taco Bell. You know, it's this kind of go back the other way. And it's like, oh, there's the train tracks. And so, yeah, I get that. And then, yeah, third per capita next year, #1 was the thing they say at the end of the song. And I just knew, I was like, this is something specific. Richmond had the highest murder rates in the country throughout the 90s. In 1994, it was second in the nation for the highest per capita murder rate. In 1995, it was third. And then the line, next year, #1, 1997, Richmond had the highest per capita murder rate in the United States. Wild. So this song is like, it's probably one of their biggest songs. It's like the show closer. They named the album after this. They named their festival after this. And it's so specifically Richmond. And meanwhile, people like us are like, yeah, sunshine over the over the James, and it's just like about like gentrified neighborhoods and chemicals in the water of this town and murder rates.
Yeah. Richmond's history is so interesting. It's one of the most overlooked cities.
It's a cool city. I like Richmond a lot.
Like, I think its historical significance, I think people remember it for being the capital of the Confederacy.
Yeah.
I think that's it. You know, and I think everybody forgets everything else that's ever happened in that city. And it's just a city that never really grew too much.
Well, the river keeps it from growing. Like,
Yeah,
you can only
which I
go
think
so far.
Really has helped it retain a lot of its, like, identity and interesting, you know, aspects. But, like, yeah, Richmond's a cool city. It's one of the cooler cities I've ever been to.
Yeah, I love Richmond. It's such a cool town. It's got the southern vibe, but it's also arty, and there's a really strong music and history there. And yeah, you're right. It is like, it was the capital of the Confederacy, but like, it's now a blue spot in the state of Virginia. So Virginia's a weird purple state sometimes too. But, let's do the aftermath and wrap up here. So they would leave Lookout Records for Fat Wreck and put out One Wrench in 2000 and Front Porch Stories in 2002. This is drummer Eric Larson's final album with Avail, as he will be replaced by Ed Trask, who played in the Discord Records band Holy Rollers and the band Keepone. Fitting. Eric Larson goes on to play in Alabama Thunder Pussy, and then he would play in a number of metal bands and release a series of stoner and doom metal albums under his own name. He's a metal guy. That's primarily what he is known for. Like, every other band he was in was mostly a metal band, and he's been in a bunch. Avail never officially broke up, but they would stop playing live in 2007, and they would say, we will never reunite. So it's kind of like, well, are you broken up? But eventually, that proved not be true. Tim Berry goes on to do a number of solo records. He becomes basically does the punk rock troubadour thing, where it's just like him and an acoustic guitar, almost exclusively. But in 2019, Avail reunited. And what's amazing is I was in Richmond to see Page 99 and Majority Rule reunite. It was cool. It was like one of the first times they reunited in forever. It was so exciting. It was Richmond. It was full of Richmond people. It's all Richmond locals. And we were outside talking with some people, and specifically Punk Rock Jesse. And everyone there was like a Richmond person. And they were talking about, Over the James tickets are going on sale tomorrow. The Avail reunion tickets are going on sale tomorrow. And it was like all of these people talking about like, I'm so excited. I cannot wait to see Avail. You know, I see them again. Some of them had never seen them before. Everyone was so pumped to see them. And it really shows you how important Avail is to Richmond. Absolutely incredible. I want to go to an Over the James. They've done them a few times now. There's like a fun story about one of them. I think the 2022 one, like during Avail's set, a train rolls through and just like honks it, pulls its horn through. And Avail are like known for the kind of a train band too, because Dixie has the imagery of like the guy with the bindle, and I think they were like really punk guys too early on. I think they were squatters and probably train hoppers, especially Gwamper there, hitchhiking across the country. I'm sure he rode a train, but it's kind of cool that the train like hit it right there during their set there. Yeah, some of those Over the Jameses are wild. Like, there was one year they had like Quicksand and Screaming Females and like a ton of Cave In, like all played the same Over the James show. So they do them now every year, it seems like, or most years. So I should go to one. I've never seen Avail. I've seen Tim Berry live, but never Avail. And then, Gwamper would go on to play in Smoke or Fire. Joe Banks would play with Eric Larson and Chuck McCauley in a band called Freeman. And yeah, Avail are now I think they're just a Richmond band. I don't know that they'll play outside of Richmond. I don't know if they have or not, but they may have, but not anywhere close to me where I've seen them. But, well, did we win?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Very easily. What would you rate it?
I would say I might get a solid 4. Could easily see that creep up if I come back to this more often than I have in the past.
It's a 4.5 for me. I love this record. It's incredible. It's such a good album. It's their best record, easily, to me. And it's not quite a 5-star for me, just because maybe that's just because I haven't spent enough time with it. Like, I have listened to it a lot, but not even enough to get it to 5 stars. But if anything holds back, it's maybe like the back half of the album's not as strong, but it's still really good. So yeah, I'm in a 4.5 there. All right. Well, you're at our hard out here. So let's wrap it up. Thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate each and every one of you. Dave, thank you so much for sending this as a list in the options. Thank you for sending this on your list of options there. And yeah, it's a good one. And we talked about it. We might as well just do Horses by Patti Smith next week.
Yeah.
Let's do it. 50 years of that record. And yeah, we'll do that. So very rarely do we know what we're talking about next week before we finish recording. So that's an easy one. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Oh, you can follow us anywhere online at PunkLottoPod. Where are we following you, Dylan?
Follow me at Husker Dylan or Major Awards Band, whichever you want to see.
All right. So thank you all so much, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.